There's a hotel room, and inside it, one of the greatest musical artists in history sits alone. The place is crowded, yet everything feels cold and empty. The people around him seem miles away, even though they are just a few steps apart. Michael's heart can no longer carry the weight of fame, the weight of his own life. The very burden that once gave him glory and success now feels almost unbearable. There is no shoulder to cry on, no friendly voice to open his heart to. The fans are far away. The atmosphere wraps around him with cold arms. A loneliness whispers softly in the air. A lonely heart begins to question itself, as if its own reality were a false story, or perhaps a cruel joke. Every path feels like a dead end. He stands cornered by accusations, by screams of fate and glory, by a storm of emotion crashing against his chest. All of this became the setting where its song was born, not to climb the charts, but a desperate need to release everything that had no one to listen to. In the cold city of Moscow, there was a stranger in Moscow. The song begins by describing a cold place and an odd situation, and how unexpectedly everything changed. Once, everything had seemed perfect, but then all of it vanished. He sees all the troubles as a heavy burden falling from the sky, wishing it would stop and that happy days would come again. Remember that Michael wrote this song in 1993. During those years, he was facing legal claims that turned his life upside down. He went from being widely acclaimed and admired to becoming the focus of intense judgment, not only by the judicial system, but also by the media, which were deeply invasive and severely judgmental. At one point, the media even lied or misrepresented aspects of Michael's life. He found himself in the middle of a circus. When people demanded bread, his life became the bread they consumed. So while he was in Russia, there was a strange combination of feelings. The crowd were so kind and loving as always. The staff was very supportive. Apparently, everything was fine. But, on the other hand, there was this ongoing problematic situation. Moscow was only a stop, yet it became the place where Michael could no longer carry the weight. How does it feel when you are alone and you are cold inside? Here, abandoned in my fame, Armageddon of the brain. This is how Michael reveals his purest feeling. There is no catchy chorus here. Instead, we hear a person expressing and sharing what he would normally never say aloud. His life was often surrounded by sadness, especially during his childhood. The way his father raised him, in a harsh and aggressive manner, built a wall that grew larger over time, making it difficult for him to connect easily with others. Considering how betrayed he felt during the legal accusation and the public judgment, the sense of isolation became strong enough to make him feel truly abandoned, longing for the good old days to return. The song ends with a wish for peace, as he says, "Take my name and just let me be," possibly expressing a desire to stop being an icon and simply become another person among the crowd. And finally, the question that represents the song, repeated over and over again. But there is something even more intimate about this song. Michael didn't write it in a studio surrounded by producers. He wrote it alone, in a hotel room during the Dangerous World Tour. Imagine that contrast. Every night, stadiums filled with screaming fans, likes, applause, adoration, and then silence. A room, closed curtains, the distant sound of a foreign city breathing outside the window. That is where Stranger in Moscow was born. Not from strategy, not from commercial ambition, but from isolation. When he described the feeling of being abandoned in my fame, it was not poetic exaggeration, it was literal. He had reached a level where very few people could truly understand him. Fame creates distance, distance creates silence, and silence, when prolonged, becomes loneliness. The irony is almost unbearable. Millions of people knew his name, yet in that moment he felt unknown. The rain that opens the song is not accidental. Rain often represents cleansing, reflection, melancholy. But here it feels heavier, colder, endless. Almost like the world outside mirrors the storm inside his own mind. There is also something very different about the production. Unlike many of his previous hits, this song is restrained, minimal, slow. There is a space between sounds. That space matters. Because in that emptiness, we hear something rare, Michael without spectacle. No explosive choreography, no dramatic vocals run meant to impress, just control pain. And perhaps that is why the song was never meant to dominate charts. It was never crafted to conquer radio. It was created to survive a moment, to survive loneliness, to survive accusation, to survive the feeling of losing control over one's own narrative. There's a subtle tragedy in that. He was a man who had mastered performance, yet in real life he had no script, no rehearsal, no protection. Just headlines, cameras, speculations, and in that chaos, writing became the only safe place. Music became his shield, and Stranger in Moscow became his confession. Not shouted, whispered. There are thousands of examples throughout history of icons who have fallen into disgrace, of how fame can be a double-edged sword, bringing glory but also pain. Michael's story was one of those countless cases where money and fame couldn't heal the scars of the past or the present. It also shows how people can demonize someone when the icon becomes bigger than the person, for better or for worse. He was extraordinary at what he did, one of the best in history, leaving behind a legacy that endures through time. Proof of the beautiful and powerful things a person can create through art. Behind the king of pop, there was a man at the top of the mountain, alone in the silence of a room. Just another person in this world who also suffered, who also laughed and cried. He was full of wishes and insecurities, with a warm heart marked by scars. A man who gave his life to what he loved more than anything, making music, making people dance, and helping them feel seen in a song like Stranger in Moscow.
Stranger in Moscow was written when I was in Moscow on the Dangerous tour. And it was just a strange, eerie, lonely time for me. Outside my hotel was just a sea of faces of fans chanting and screaming. But I was inside my room and I felt so all alone, like I was like the last person on the planet. And in the song I say, how does it feel when you're alone and you're cold inside? I say it's like a stranger in Moscow. And that's pretty much how I felt. And the people were lovely. They were some of the nicest people I've ever met. And the concert was very successful. But that day, especially that day, I just felt this different feeling, and the song "Stranger in Moscow" came to me. So that's how that was written.